we talk about the importance of data and AI governance, right? Historically, as so many organizations have seen, when we've tried to implement, anybody who's tried to implement AI or any solution which has been new in the market, uh, it has always reached a point where an organization faces a challenge.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another really exciting episode of Voice Out Wednesdays, where we at Voice of Crypto get really interesting guests from the Web3, blockchain, crypto, AI, and the emerging technologies space. And yet again, we have a really interesting guest with us. We have Mr. Manas Arora, who's the Director of Intelligent Automation at Capgemini. Hi Manas, and it's our pleasure to have you on our podcast today. How are you doing?
Hi, Varuni. Thanks a lot for having me over today.
The pleasure is all ours, I must say. And you're quite a deep name in the space of emerging technologies, and you've had your fair share of experiences in this space, marketing the technologies, and watched them grow really carefully. And I'm sure that over the last 1 decade, there has been a major shift in how the industry has progressed. So, if we take a look at the retrospective view of how the technology has grown, how have you seen the industry progress in the last decade in terms of AI and automation, Manas?
No, certainly, I was exposed to this while everybody was talking digital back in 2010, 11. That was the era that there was a large transformation going on from a digital front. I personally got involved in the subject of automation and AI, which of course evangelized to the other topics of Web 3.0 around blockchain, metaverse, and all these sort of new technologies kind of coming in. So, what I've seen retrospectively is definitely the fact that it's a big technology revolution which is now driving the industry. A lot of things will change. The way we work, the way we interact with brands, the way we work, in a day-to-day basis, how we draw intelligence. Uh, Back again when all of this started, technology in some form or automation in some form or the other had always existed, right? To put things in perspective, there was some sort of workflow automation which always existed. There was basic macro automation which was always there, right? But around the age of 2013, 2014, I think that is where robotic process automation came in, and we typically divide, and I personally like to put these into three buckets. Bucket one is something that mimics human actions. So that is your robotic process automation, which has no bit of intelligence, but it will purely mimic the human actions. The second part, which sort of started spreading very wildly within enterprises and organizations after 2016, 17, was the semi-cognitive piece, right? Which of course would complement the larger robotics market. And the semi-cognitive piece, is something that augments the way a human thinks, right? So it works alongside a human. So something like intent recognition, natural language processing, those are the kind of thoughts that started coming in, and POC started, and organizations started exploring strategies around it. Products started coming in the market. But now is the most interesting part, and this is where we see something which we call as a fully cognitive solution or a fully cognitive automation, which mimics human intelligence. So it is capable of understanding each and every sentiment that a human has, understand the customer profile, respond to queries, and a lot of products are sort of coming out in this perspective in the market. And this is where my key interest also is, right? So beyond my day job, I prefer working and exploring trends and discussing those amongst the community around how automation is progressing in the market.
Absolutely, and I must say that the technology itself has seen quite a bit of growth in the last couple of years itself. You're pretty right about the products, the services, the n number of solutions that are coming up that are sort of AI and automation centric. But this isn't something that we're seeing right now. It has happened for almost a decade now. In terms of, and I see that AI has been the buzzword for most of this year. We can also see
Yeah.
quite a few questions flowing in at this moment, which we will be addressing towards the end of the session. But basis the questions that we're also getting, I'm sure everyone's excited to sort of picturize or predict what a future around AI would look like. What sort of a view will we see if we talk about how the industry transformation with pan out with AI and automation in picture. How do you, as someone who is, let's say, an insider in the industry, how would you picture it?
So I typically try and put this again the answer in three buckets for an easy understanding, right? So one is the pure play AI ecosystem, which I said is now evolved to fully cognitive automation. We are looking at the new age of generative AI as well, which has varied applications, and we'll I'll try and touch upon that later in the conversation of how and what are the key challenges around it as well. But then largely bucket one is AI itself, so a lot of product innovation around AI, creating accelerators, taking them to the customers themselves evangelizing it for their own business as per their industry. So that is bucket one. Bucket two of what I see is the important part of it is AI working along with the new ecosystem such as blockchain and metaverse, right? That is a fairly important bucket because it's altogether a new ecosystem that the world is trying to explore. Brands are trying to reach out to their customers in a new way altogether. Blockchain is impacting security. It's creating a lot of buzz around how to keep things safe when there are different transactions happening which are sensitive in nature. So how AI plays a role there. That's bucket number two. And bucket number three is we talk about the importance of data and AI governance, right? Historically, as so many organizations have seen, when we've tried to implement anybody who's tried to implement AI or any solution which has been new in the market,
Hmm.
uh, it has always reached a point where an organization faces a challenge to govern it. So AI governance becomes a very big challenge. Now, a lot of AI solutions are being plugged in organizations in different functions, different units. But how is that going to be governed? Is the AI effective enough, right? So the data strategy is very important now. The data popped out as a top sort of an anchor when we spoke about marketing in the earlier days, right? Data, doing customer profiles, social listening, all of those things sort of it started buzzing in the market somewhere around 2014-15. But now, pretty much data is at the heart of AI. If your data is not correct, your models will never outperform or perform the way that you expect them to. And that is something that organizations are typically looking to achieve in today's date.
Absolutely. So couldn't agree more on the fact that data is one of the most important things, and we can see that the big firms, the big four, are already playing around their data management. You very correctly in the previous answer also mentioned how sort of AI would develop and how and what sort of challenges could organizations face going forward. However, when we talk about the early adopters in each industry, and there's a certain low hanging fruit that every industry sort of aims to capture. When we take a look at AI, can you explain some of the low hanging areas in business operations? Like you did mention workflow management has already sort of adopted AI, but what other organizations or sectors, so to say, would first enter the AI race, according to you?
So, a good question. I think the way I would want to answer this is again, AI is always divided as per a particular intent that a business or a enterprise, whether it's a small enterprise, medium enterprise, or a large enterprise, the way they're trying to solve a problem, right? So, typically we see AI for people, AI for automation, and AI for decisions, right? These are the three areas where AI plays a very, very important role. Now,
Yeah.
when I say AI for people, it is about making lives of people easier within an organization to do their jobs daily, right?
Yeah.
A lot of organizations are outsourcing and setting up captive units in different low cost locations purely from the purpose of saving cost. But
Mhm.
then the factor, and this is just a representative example, but they are processing documents in several languages, right? A simple language translation utility is a very small example of a machine learning enabled engine which could
Mhm.
understand different formats, extract the information, create the relevance, create a case, and post it. Right. So, in that perspective, I think AI for people is what helps people's lives become easier. Then a lot of organizations are already automating a lot of processes. Right. Classic example in finance, invoice processing, right? A lot of organizations want their invoices to go straight through, payments to go out so that they don't default on contracts, on payments, etc. Now, in that particular sense, intelligent document processing, which is another very important part of how AI for automation, how AI really helps an automation to perform better, right?
Hmm.
Email management now, in the front office environment, a lot of organizations have multiple emails coming in.
Yeah.
It takes them a lot of time to respond to unhappy customers, right? So if a customer is unhappy and you take 10 hours to respond to that customer, you probably would have just lost the customer by then, right? How do you really make sure that you have an AI to actually read the emails, understand the sentiments, take corrective action, respond to the customer, keep them warm, and all the corrective measures that need to be taken internally also get communicated within the enterprise, right? So this is where AI for automation really plays an important role, and then comes AI for decisions. Now, um, we typically divide analytics into four different parts: diagnostic, descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive, right?
Hmm.
Descriptive is very simple. It collects data and it shows you a visualization of what really is happening in your ecosystem. But
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
the minute we try and double click on something which is diagnostic, right, which finds a problem, right, prescriptive, which tells you a corrective action to take before something goes wrong, right? So, or predictive, which will predict an action that is going to happen, or a forecast which is going to go wrong, or a particular customer behavior which is being noted within your systems could make the customer leave you, right? It's as simple as that. So this is where AI for decisions, your custom ML models come into play, where you can actually
Hmm.
help build these models to understand your problem statements better, take action well within time to solve the problem, and
Hmm.
so on and so forth. To further elaborate, I think I can talk about two industry verticals and two horizontals where AI plays a very big role in today's date, and they were pretty much the early adopters. One is financial services. Now, banking as
Hmm.
an industry, uh, we all know anti-money laundering, know your customer, which is KYC,
Yeah.
are two very important processes for any bank, uh, irrespective of the tar that they, whether it's retail, whether it's commercial, whether it's corporate, it doesn't matter. If any of the tars, they will all need these two functionalities to happen. Right now, a bank would do 2 million, 3 million, 4 million transactions in a day, right?
Hmm.
How do you really know that some of these transactions are falling out of line, something that is not really within the boundaries or the regulations set by the bank, or it's against a particular pattern of a customer? So we typically use unsupervised learning there,
Hmm.
machine models, where it's based on pattern detection, and it takes out the anomalies and it points out the anomalies to the bank to investigate further, right? To which also AI can possibly do that bit of investigation.
Hmm.
Again, know your customer involves managing sensitive information, so there is a component of security and GDPR, at least in Europe, on how you are managing the
Hmm.
document. But it also has a sense of making sure if the documents uploaded are authentic, they were taken at the right location at the right time. Basically, if you're doing a live KYC, you have to make sure that the documents are collected there and then. So banking typically,
Hmm.
has seen a lot of flux, I would say, around AI being adopted very quickly.
Yeah.
Uh, Beyond this, I think I would typically want to also put focus on manufacturing as an industry. So manufacturing again, manufacturing itself has evolved so much over the years, right? And I typically always compare this era of software automation and AI to something that the industrial age had, sort of achieved several years back.
Hmm.
But then to manage the integrities or the nitty-gritties, in fact, of any manufacturing process. So, say if a large car brand is manufacturing a car, right, and if they're welding different parts together to create the overall structure of the car, and if the welds actually have a gap in it or they're not done properly, they can lead to an accident and possibly harm the customers that they have in their brand image. But are they in the position to manually inspect every joint of the weld? No, they're not. So they use AI for that visual analysis. And again, data becomes very important because you have to annotate the right data to make sure the algorithm knows what's right and what's wrong. And then it
Absolutely.
sort of auto learns over time. Uh, Again, when I pick up a few examples of horizontals, finance, of course, a very low hanging fruit. We've
Hmm.
seen finance transformations
Hmm.
over the years, along with contact center again being one of the early adopters of tech, because that typically
Okay.
affects the revenue cycle of an organization.
Hmm.
Finance, we've seen automation and AI play a very, very important role in every single function. So we typically mark out three value chains: procure to pay, order to cash, and record to report. So in these three cycles, on every step, we've seen AI play a very, very important role. And a lot of products which are out there in the market already have started adopting AI inherently. So something like a black line high radius would already have AI being built into them to help
Hmm.
customers absorb technology better. But
Yeah.
more importantly, it's about organizations building products to solve a particular problem for the company,
Hmm.
which is happening at the moment. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so very well categorized how these sectors have been dependent on AI and automation. And you also made a great comparison about how the sort of leap that we have made in terms of how industries function is, or sort of is, comparable to the industrial revolution that we saw long back. And you briefly touched upon D2C. On the D2C industry, and how there are more products that are targeted towards directly towards the customers. How is AI going to change customer interaction with brands, between brands and customers or consumers in the future? Because that again is one arena, and you did mention how it is already in play. But if you could focus a little bit more on that and touch upon the front of D2C industries and how they would leverage from the tech.
So certainly, yes. I think when we segment customers, we always segment them into three categories. Segment one are the millennials, which
Mm-hmm.
we all think are extremely tech savvy and they want everything to be resolved at a click.
Yeah.
Segment two is what's between the old age of the Gen Y, as we typically call it, but then what's
Mm.
between the older generation and the millennials. Uh, I think we belonging to the middle part of the whole generation are the most conflicted. So we would
Mhm.
still want a personalized phone call to a contact center to interact and get our problems solved. And or we would sometimes want things to be solved at a click. But the older generation definitely still, and a lot of research has been done in the market for this. A lot of papers also published would still prefer to have an interaction with a brand.
Yeah.
Uh, Through voice or through visual interfaces, right? So in that perspective, I think if I pick up the interaction with the brand, I break it into two parts. One is customer service,
Mm.
where how the brands are servicing their customers today, and this
Mm.
could be across your D2C segment or B2B segment as well. And the second part of this is your marketing and sales. That's the
Yeah.
second touch point that we typically see organizations have in a generic sense more towards the customers. And these are the two areas where the servicing angle is very, very heavy. Now, from a customer service standpoint, there was an era, again, as I just explained in the beginning, how robotics has moved on to semi-cognitive and now to cognitive automation. When we talk about customer service and self-service channels purely, right, which serves the millennials the best, there used to be rule-based chatbots before. You could
Yeah.
log into a website, solve to ask a particular question, it'll give you a guided resolution, and you'll get to a particular answer and close
Mhm.
the issue. And if your answer doesn't get, if you don't get the answer, you'll probably pick up the phone and call the contact center, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, but then came, chatbots, or now we are living in an era of chatbots, which we typically call as conversational AI, right?
Yeah.
Now, earlier we only had the medium of talking to an automated system through text, but now we have something that where we can speak to an automated system through text, voice, or even a digital
Mm.
human avatar, right?
Yeah.
So all three are typically possible, and I'll elaborate a bit on that. Now, from a conversational standpoint, when we talk about a text-based conversational design, we typically would look at a system which is able to understand the sentiment, understand the customer profile, validate the customer if the customer is actually an authentic customer and not somebody who's
Okay.
trying to hack into the system or trying to steal somebody else's
Mm.
identity and cause some damage. But then the idea behind this is actually having a real-time interaction with the customer, understanding these different aspects that I said, sentiments, customer profiling, understanding the request, and then triggering it back to your backend systems to make those relevant changes for your customer, right? For example, somebody could be calling a bank or chatting with a bank to change the PIN of their ATM card, right? So once they pass through the security questions and the validation is done, then the AI is capable of triggering a response back to the backend systems to change that, whether there's a mainframe systems or old legacy banking systems, get a response and communicate it back to the customer. That's the element one of what I'm discussing. Element two is the voice part of it, right? Now,
Okay.
contact centers typically organizations feel that they are slightly more cost heavy in terms of, and also from an employee experience standpoint, doing repetitive stuff is something that kills the employee motivation and experience to work. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that is why we typically see a contact center industry has the highest rate of iterations amongst very few other industries who have a very high level of iteration, right? This is where a voice bot really comes into play. This is where a conversational AI, where and this is something that is being implemented as we speak in a lot of organizations. A lot of organizations are trying it. There's a lot of study around it where a person can actually interact using a voice channel with an IVR that speaks the same language, understands the dialect. It has a component that generative AI as well,
Yeah.
uh, which we can touch upon later. But then it is capable of having a voice conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the third segment of what I want to speak about is human-based digital avatars, right? Now, uh, out of the three groups that I defined, the millennials, us in the middle, and the older generation, us in the middle and the older generation, right? Sort of always want to uh, have a face-to-face interaction if possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is how we've seen technology transform in our years and ages, right? Now, in that sense, creating a human avatar who can understand what you're talking about, set the content, interpret, and we all know that systems don't understand words, they understand digits, they work binary, right? How do you really communicate? And then there's a complete algorithm to understand the digital avatar, which looks like a human, is interacting with you, will respond to you with the same emotions. And this plays a very, very important role in the healthcare industry for say pre-operation, post-operation sort of surgical care. This can play a very, very important role in the banking industry where somebody who's looking to go and sit and take some investment advice, for example, or advice around opening a bank account or closing a bank account or something like that, right? So this is where we've seen increased use cases around it. Or this could even target your own employee experience, right? Or customer experience. You walk into a retail store. There are so many stores now, at least in the UK, US, and all these other economies, where you don't have people in the store. People walk in, people
Yeah,
buy
that's a
food,
new
and then
thing.
walk. If they fall into a problem, if there is an interactive AI, a visual AI, which they can speak to, get an answer, gives
Mm,
them a more personalized experience altogether. So
absolutely.
I think if we wrap it all together, customer experience from a contact center standpoint has transformed beyond the typical rule-based chatbots to now voice-enabled chatbots,
Yeah.
to more digital avatar-based chatbots where you can actually have live conversation. Now, coming to sales and marketing, again, that's the second point of how brands really interact with their customers. I think the very, very important element to that is customer profiling, knowing what a customer wants,
Got
understanding how the customer's social media behavior is, what they've been
Yeah.
looking, searching. So all of this sort of involves very strong AI models that are built at the back end. Again, some of them are built using clustering techniques. Some of them could be regressive as well. And this is where they sort of speak and evaluate and create a customer profile, and then target a sale or a marketing campaign to a customer in a personalized manner. And we sort of started experiencing that on our daily lives, on Google, on Instagram, and some of these other channels. Then
Absolutely.
brands also look at direct reach or email reach out in that sense also to create that impact.
Absolutely. I'm sure with hyper personalization at the center of it, most of the brands want to head towards automation and AI. And it is going to, without a doubt, change the face of customer interaction. Already has for a lot of not just bigger, but tier two, tier three brands and firms as well. So, I mean, I'm sure this has been a question in a lot of enterprises' mind, whether, how they should automate. Should they even automate? And I'm not sure whether everyone or every other firm on the face of this earth does need automation or AI in any way, or would they follow the hype that is around the sector, the current hype? And we can't deny that with AI and automation being the buzzword, a lot of entrepreneurs sort of wanted to pivot towards that. And the same happened with blockchain, Web3, 2 years down the lane. I mean, 2 years back. So. You as an insider know how the tech works and what sort of enterprises should actually go ahead and adopt it. So how does an enterprise decide whether they need to automate, what they should exactly automate, and how to manage automation? Because I'm sure once it is in place, there would be some sort of back end management that would still be required. So
Yeah.
how does one answer all of those questions?
So I think the most important part to this is not only defined, while it is defined at an organization level, right? So how I have experienced this as an organization always has, and it's very industry specific, right? So
Mm-hmm.
financial services would always want to start exploring some of these solutions that bring transparency to the table, like blockchain first, right? So it's quite an industry fitment. Visual AI is something that a manufacturing would always want to explore first. So every industry has a certain push to what they want to explore. But principally, I think how an organization operates is at a unit level, then at a business level, and then at an organization level, right? So multiple units make up a business. Multiple businesses within an organization make up the organization, right? This is how a structure typically is. Now, at any given point in time, and let's try and put focus on medium and large enterprises, uh, they always typically have something or the other going on, at least as a proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's very important is for an organization to set its strategy right. Now, when we say set its strategy right in terms of uh, a lot of organizations today, and this is all public research, face a lot of challenges in managing their own IT ecosystems or tech
Mhm.
landscape or tech ecosystem that they're built within, right? So firstly, not land in that issue is very important. How do you really manage that? Is first identify the key business drivers. Uh, let's not go for a new technology till the time you don't have a clear objective of what you're looking to achieve out of that technology, right?
Yeah.
And it's always not cost takeout. We see a lot of I've seen a lot of organizations. I've seen I speak at a lot of forums. I meet a lot of industry peers and clients as well, and what I've seen is sometimes the objective is beyond just cost takeout. It could be regulatory compliance, could be customer experience, could just be legacy systems not making them do their job right, and a lot of manual effort and employee experience going for a toss. So it is, and there are enough technologies in the market now. So there is process mining, which helps you understand how your process is really functioning, what are the bottlenecks, gives you directional advice on what could be automated. And automation, when I
Mhm.
say, is not only robotics, it could be AI, it could be custom built solutions to solve that particular problem. There is an era of citizen development which the organizations are now trying, where
Mm.
they're trying to democratize automation, where
Mhm.
everybody can automate their mundane tasks or issues that they face in their daily work. And but what I feel, and on basis the research that I've been doing so far, I think what's important are three metrics, right? First is the value stream analysis. So if you're automating a process, first analyze the process to see whether it's really fit for an automation or a transformation or not, or whether you can achieve a particular metric by just optimizing the process and not really force fitting technology on top of it. Second thing, where I see a lot of challenges is not mapping the risks and controls associated to a process properly, right? A lot of processes in an organization can impact, say, if you touch a finance process the wrong way, it can impact your regulatory reporting. it can impact what you're declaring in the market, and eventually can get you into a lot of fines and problems, right? So if you're
Hmm.
looking to achieve uh, automation in that sense, I think you should first map the risk and controls. So process first, risks and controls, and then look at the right fit of technology
Hmm.
to solve your problem. So, in a nutshell, an organization works both in a tactical and a strategic manner,
Hmm.
and this is where AI comes very, very relevant.
Hmm.
Now, AI again could be implemented as a tactical solution to solve a
Hmm.
point problem, or as a strategic solution to solve the problem of a larger value chain. So, this is where I typically see this juggling between the realms of
Understood.
organization.
No, that does make sense. When we talk about AI, I think a big chunk of the spotlight that AI takes is taken by generative AI, especially if you look at the major controversies. Very recently, I was reading a news report wherein a US judge ruled about copyrights and whether generative AI should get copyrights for, um, uh, s- I think, a few of US's Hollywood screenplay writers had been protesting about copyrights for films, and of course it went in favor of human ingenuity. However, when we talk about generative AI, we have seen immense progress in that one arena.
Mhm.
We've already seen generative AI come up with, I think, graphics. Text was, I think, the first thing that they came up
Yeah.
with, and then there was music and so much more. What are the new trends? I'm sure that there'll be more incoming, and how are sort of product companies progressing with these emerging trends around generative AI?
So I think generative AI in particular is taking a big leap, and I'll spend
Mm-hmm.
about a minute just trying to explain what I mean by that. So we all started with the OpenAI, and OpenAI was the buzzword at that point in time. GPT came out with multiple versions. Now we have GPT-4 in the market, but we
Mm-hmm.
also have Google Bard, which is something that Google plans to get in competition, which is again around the PALM 4 as they call it, which is going to come in competition with GPT-4.
Yeah.
Uh, Elon Musk is now talking about another AI company which is going to go and explore the universe. So I think
Yeah.
in that sense, a lot of developments are happening, which we already call as pre-trained large models, right? This is the industry term for it. So these are pre-trained models which can generate a response, and we and I'll touch upon it a little later around different use cases around it. But then uh, the industry definitely, as I said, and this is something that I largely feel both from an organization perspective and from an industry wide perspective,
Mm-hmm.
regulations is and governance is very important on how this is going to proceed. Right
Yeah.
now, OpenAI came, a lot of organizations got into the race of competing, of course, you know uh, first to come to the market, get the most amount of recognition, and then people are generally building products and enhancing them. For example, Adobe came out with something called as Adobe Firefly. For example, GitHub has come up with Copilot X, which is supporting the developer community. Right,
Mm.
The Microsoft Bing has come up with an image creation AI. So a lot of these, Nvidia is also doing a lot of
Yeah.
good work around the same. Right, so a lot of organizations are trying to now uh, wrap their products with a layer of generative
Mhm.
AI. And how this is really impacting the market is in the sense of, again, diversified offerings landing in, right? A lot of these offerings could have some Mercedes Benz, for example, is now their voice assistant in their cars is going to be AI generated.
Mm.
Generative AI will use generative AI at the back end. So I think the key element which everybody is wanting to now focus on is how these pre-trained large models can work with company knowledge and data, right? So it can't be relied alone on a large model. There has to be company knowledge and data, which gets combined with this element of generative AI. And how will this really add value to an organization, whether it's for their own employees or whether it's for their customers? So, and this is where the buzz is now, and this is where all these
Mm.
products are also trying to focus now. A lot of organizations are trying to build products and offerings and services around this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you already mentioned quite a few big names who are leveraging generative AI. Are there any other upcoming trends in terms of generative AI, particularly if you talk about top brands or companies that are already working on solutions? Do you have any names or trends in mind that are upcoming?
So again, as I said, Mercedes Benz is one example, which is public information. They're trying to integrate generative AI as a part of their voice response system within the car. But
Mhm.
when we look at generative AI, we usually kind of divide that into five blocks, right? So we start with text. Everybody knows about text, that it can help you generate content.
Yeah.
It can write sales emails. It could do n number of things when it comes to text. The second part of this is image, right? The real business application comes from the more complex use cases. While text is very important more from a customer experience standpoint and generating responses in terms of text, but the image part of it is also helping organizations in a big way, in terms of creating 3D models, including generating images which are custom, or designing prototypes.
Mhm.
This is where image based generative AI is really creating an impact. We see video based generative AI, which is also now popping up in the market. So basically, how to show your product to the market, video creation,
Mhm.
etc. Then we have an element of speech. Now, speech plays a very very important role in terms of accent coherence, in terms of generating an accent, generating a response. These are the different areas where we see speech also play. And then, of course, we spoke about code, and how it's helping the coders in the market to sort of code better. Text to program, or an app idea, you explain an app idea and it'll start writing the code for you. Systems are that intelligent. But there is uh, we have seen examples in the market. Italy banned the use of ChatGPT in their country, but until the point when it was clarified, and now it's open to use again. But Europe is actually planning to put in strong regulations around the use of generative AI, and how all these will start working here. So, as a perspective, yes, organizations have started utilizing it. Unity as
Mhm.
an organization, again, Unity is one of the world's largest 3D model creators, right? They've included Gen AI in this, and they've put out two new accelerators in
Mhm.
their offering, which can work with customers to provide that end-to-end experience as well, and they don't have to rely on other models. So uh, I think it'll be exciting to see over the next 5 years how all these products really fit into the market, which one survive, which one move out. A lot of organizations, even service providers, are now building their own products and offerings around it, which are quite market facing in that sense.
Absolutely. So I'm sure big leaps in coming for the sector as a whole in the next 5 years. However, we can't deny that regulations and
Yeah.
compliances will play a huge role in how the technology itself develops. So when we talk about upcoming trends, one another trend that has been in the market when we speak about AI in particular is its integration or the convergence of AI with blockchain, metaverse, Web3 technologies. What sort of role do you think artificial intelligence or Gen AI would play in with sort of this another emerging technology that has been around for some time?
So I think they have to coexist. In fact, they have to integrate to work
Yeah.
better. There is no way either of these technologies can survive on their own, at least in the near future, and how the world is progressing, and how financial crimes or other fraudulent activities are also increasing, which of course, as any new technology comes in, the bad elements also try and solve it. So giving you a perspective on blockchain, of very fundamentally, we know that a blockchain is a distributed ledger that sort of duplicates and distributes a transaction amongst different computers in its network, right, in the blockchain. Now, blockchain will help you avoid fraud, will help you avoid any sort of hacking in that sense, and
Mm.
keep a very legit record of how the transactions are flowing. Comes very effective in finance, contract management, supply chain. But then, very very interestingly, I'll pick up an example of healthcare, for example. Now, when we look at the healthcare industry, clinical trials, drug trials, patient data is very very key and important. It's very very personal to an organization and to the individual as well, right? It's not public information. How blockchain will enable this is by actually creating an ecosystem where the data flows in an authorized way from point A to point B, being tracked on who's accessing the data, and how it is being utilized. But AI is the one that is going to actually evaluate the whole data, right? Create and understand how that data is really going to. So, for example, how a particular drug is reacting to a group of individuals in their genomes, or the way their bodies are reacting, right? Utilizing that data to create an insight is something that AI is going to do. So, as I said, they both have to coexist. Again, it seems like my favorite topic, but then again, in frauds, when we talk about financial services, there's pattern-based recognition. Now,
Yeah.
even if transactions are flowing through the blockchain from one node to the other, uh, at a node level, if an AI software starts evaluating all the transactions which are happening, there can be a significant uprise or a very early detection of a particular problem in a financial services environment, right? But it comes with its own challenges naturally, because the computing power required to run AI and blockchain together is going to be phenomenal.
Mm.
We all understand that, and it's a large
Mm.
infrastructure cost for a lot of organizations. How this gets offered as a service on the cloud is something that is going to be very, very interesting to see. And even if it does or if it does not, but then that'll be an important thing to see. And who owns the data is going to be the second big challenge, right? So uh, while data is secure, and we're all talking about blockchain keeping it secure, and if you add AI on the top of it, how do we really ensure data integrity and security of a layer on top of blockchain? So this is how I look at blockchain playing and AI coexisting.
Mm.
Whereas if you ask about the metaverse, I think a very bold move that Facebook and the other associated companies rebranded themselves as Meta altogether. That shows their commitment to the metaverse. But metaverse is nothing but a 3D environment, right? Where you have humans experience something that they haven't experienced as such while interacting on the web or with a brand, right? So, picking one example of, say, a retail industry, for example, right? If a retail industry says that I want to open a metaverse store, right? And I want my customers to come there and explore the products and place orders, right? How do you really create that experience, right? When we talk about whether the customer profile, what kind of shoes have they already liked on Instagram, where are they going, understanding that is all AI enabled. AI is something that is going to read those algorithms, whether it's personalized shopping, whether it's virtual trial rooms that you're looking at, whether it's gamification of the shopping experience altogether, taking customer feedback. These are the typical areas where AI and metaverse together will again play. And very broadly dividing it again, if I pick up what I said earlier, AI for people,
Mm.
AI for decisions, and AI for automation, all these three realms will fit into both metaverse and blockchain.
Absolutely, and you're completely right about, while there is, it's almost inevitable that the technologies won't move together. So we are essentially looking towards a future that will involve these emerging technologies working hand in hand, and maybe a lot more transformative solutions in the market for customers and clients alike. We've almost come towards the end of our really interesting half an hour, 40 minutes session, and a really insightful, I think, presentation of how AI has transformed and will continue to transform lives and businesses in general. I think my last question, Manas, to you would be, what sort of a future do you imagine, and do you have any final closing thoughts on? Well, our topic for the day was exploring the transformative power of generative AI, and we spoke in depth about generative AI, and how companies are leveraging this at this point, and what sort of a future do we imagine for these technologies in the future. So, what would be your final closing thoughts? And while I hate to use the word predictions, but I guess I will just might as well. So, what do you sort of envision for this space going forward?
So I think it's at a curve like
Mm.
never before seen, right? Technology has never been this. It's never gone literally at a vertical peak, as I would say, and it's still growing and it's still moving ahead. I think the blockchain and metaverse are still fairly unexplored, because
Mhm.
organizations are still trying to absorb the value of AI. But
Yeah.
as soon as they understand and absorb the value of AI and start looking at the real transformative value it is delivering, they will look at alternate ecosystems to start implementing this in, which we typically call as metaverse or the blockchain. Uh, and it, in my opinion, I think the way financial frauds in today's era happen, the
Hmm.
way customer servicing is happening today, I think it's due to change. Not 10 years from now, not 5 years. I think next 2 to 3 years we'll see a very very major shift in that. So this is my final thought.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And in the Web3 space, we always say we're still early, and it stays true even for emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and generative AI. We are still early, and the learning curve, is, I'm sure, is huge. So I guess this was a really insightful session for me and for our listeners as well. I am sure that we had a lot to take away from this session about this technology that we understand so little about, as if we talk about the masses. And it was indeed an incredible session, Manas. There were a few questions about, I'm not sure if you will be able to answer them.
Go ahead. Let's try.
So there was a question about how generative AI is going to affect content creators, if at all, in the future.
So I think generative AI will never take the complete edge of content creation in that sense, right? Because when we write the content, there's a large element of empathy, or I'll say generative AI is a little away from that, or a little far from that.
Yeah.
It's for us to find out if it's going to reach that point or not. But I think the human element of understanding and empathizing towards a cause while writing content is going to be way different from a system which is going to be largely objective,
Yeah.
to a degree of emotions, but then it can't completely empathize and write the article the same way. We all are used to reading content which is more human generated, and it's very easily a lot of people can find out the difference between AI
Mhm.
generated content versus a human generated content, right? So largely in that sense, I think some of the parts which are redundant, which are repetitive, which are easier, could be replaced by the generative AI. It could give you a directional sense, but then content creation would still, I think, in the near future be a human touch skill that still should remain. However, AI is doing a lot of it now. A lot of sales emails, as I said, a lot of marketing campaigns, a lot of letters or documents are now coming through AI. But then I'm sure there's still some space for the content creation to stay in the hands of humans in that sense.
Let's hope so, or we would all be out of business essentially. There was another question wherein Mr. Amritraj wanted to know whether SaaS companies are under threat due to AI, or is AI going to be integrated into SaaS tools and applications going forward?
So I think the latter. Of course, it's a race, as I said, because the market is now pretty growing pretty vertically, right? So
Right.
I think the organizations need to evolve and catch the pace for their own survival. And for that, I think most of the SaaS companies, at least the strong ones, the established ones, and even the startups now are focusing a lot on AI and the new ecosystems which are emerging in the market. And naturally, as it's an evolution cycle, as things progress, as we also evolved, a lot of things went redundant, and we learned new things, and we
Mhm.
had to adapt to new ways. And I think similarly, SaaS companies also are doing that. And I gave a few examples as well of document processing tools in the market are already coming with pre-built ML models which need to be trained and deployed. Core technologies like finance transformations, like Blackline and High Radius, also get some bit of machine learning and AI enabled into it. So I think SaaS companies are already adapting to the new shift, and the ones who don't might face a hard time. But I think most of them are, and all the new startups that are now also coming have AI involved in them in some form or the other.
Absolutely, makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much for answering our questions and joining us today, Manas. And I feel like the verdict is in: AI is here to stay, at least for the next decade. And let's see what wonders we see from AI moving hand in hand with other emerging technologies like blockchain, metaverse, and Web3. Once again, thanks so much for joining us, Manas. It
Thank
was a
you so
great
much for
pleasure.
having me. Thanks for the session. See you.
Likewise. And we'll see our viewers next time, same place, same time, with another really interesting guest. Thank you.